Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
The Stock Movers Podcast, your roundup of companies making moves in the stock market, harnessing the power of Bloomberg data.
Okay, let's get to what's happening across some of the individual names. I'm Tom McKenzie alongside Caroline Hetker. We're joined now by our Markets Today reporter, Sam Umstead. Sam, let's start with one of the home builders then, Barratt Redrow, the UK's biggest house builder, releasing its earnings this morning. What stood out to you?
So not a particularly good report from Barratt Redrow. So their shares have dropped about 10% this morning. They're actually dragging almost all home builders in London down as well. So almost all of them are in the red. There are two things that stand out from this. So one is quite a bit of weakness in their London market. So they said in the last 3 months in particular, affordability issues there, not just for domestic potential home buyers, but also international ones as well, has weighed on their sales there. So that kind of hits quite a bit of the sector. And then the other thing is, you know, the UK government is in the midst of a major planning reform push. The problem with that is that does need to be embedded within local planning authorities, who at the moment are quite stretched as well in terms of what they can and can't get to. And that hasn't quite happened yet. So they are still facing planning delays, what they call adverse planning decisions, which is basically when projects get rejected. And so that hasn't quite filtered through yet. So some of the boosts that they were hoping for from the regulation side haven't quite come in.
Okay, so still waiting for those. In terms of shares in the retailer B&M, also down quite significantly today. Why?
Yeah, actually touching a record low. They're down about 13%. This is another quite weak trading update from B&M. So if we go back to the pandemic, B&M did very well during the pandemic because they stayed open, because they also sell food, but they mostly sell things like garden furniture. So they did extremely well during the pandemic. That's come off a little bit. And what's happened over the course of the last year or so is the FMCG business, so the bit where they sell kind of household goods, has been hit very hard by the very, very competitive grocery market in the UK. So they have not been able to invest in prices in the same way that Tesco and Sainsbury's have. That's hit their sales a bit. So although they saw a little bit of extra positivity in their like-for-like sales, it wasn't enough to impress analysts this morning, who said that given the weather has been much better, and given that there's, you know, the FMCG business for everyone else is doing quite well, they didn't quite meet expectations.
And for anyone on the letters, fast-moving consumer goods, right?
Yes, indeed.
Moving on from B&M, we are going to focus on what's happening in terms of wind turbine makers. Danish energy firm Orsted, and analysts have been changing their mind on this company.
Yeah, so it faced a lot of challenges over the course of the last couple of years, partly through issues with supply chains. Literally shipping a turbine takes much longer than it does to get a consumer good into a branch of
Yes.
B&M, for example. But they faced a lot of issues there. They faced a lot of regulatory issues, a lot of back and forth on the US on how much funding is going to go towards green energy, a lot of uncertainty there. Morgan Stanley this morning upgrading them and saying that they are now worth a look. They've hit a level where the risk reward has turned a little bit more positive, and this is kind of a contrarian call within the market. So they're pushing that this morning, and shares there up about 6%.
The Stock Movers Podcast from Bloomberg Radio. Check back with us throughout the day for the latest roundup of companies making news on Wall Street. And for the latest market-moving headlines, listen to Bloomberg Radio live. Catch us on YouTube, Bloomberg.com, and on Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with the Bloomberg Business app.